So, welcome back to 7th grade streets. This is part 3, the last and final part. It should be about an hour, a little over an hour, and this will conclude the book to 7th grade streets. I hope you enjoy.
Seventh grade streets. Brendon GMC Holden. Chapter 9. Copyright 2020. Brendon Holden. All rights reserved. 9. Home. We spend a few days at the bus station in New York, New York, pretending we were waiting for a bus. We attempt to discuss what we should do, but we do not want to admit it to one another. But we screwed up. We failed when we were in Florida. What we should have done is pay rent on an apartment. I decide to open up a conversation. We should have rented an apartment when we had the money, I said. Who, to defend our doings, said, that might have not worked. Besides, should we really give most of what we make in money for an apartment? This is not as easy as I thought it would be, I say, discouraged. What are your thoughts, Cindy? Any regrets? I'm happy to be with you, Brian. Plus I think I am pregnant, Cindy says. Are you sure, I ask? I was not sure she knew. She did not sound sure, or as if I could believe her, who thought she was just talking. Yes, she replies. I panic a little. How am I going to make this work? I thought making money could have been a bit easier, but to my surprise it wasn't, and each day that goes by we get closer to poverty and permanently living on the streets. Winter will be here shortly and Cindy will not survive on the streets. Who, attempting to make a plan, says, let us count our money. Perhaps we have a few $100s. If we do, we can buy tickets to Virginia. But once we get to Virginia, I am not sure what we are going to do, like for work. Okay, we ask the person who sells bus tickets to sell us tickets to the least populated area. Once there, we hurry to find work. We find an apartment. We rent an apartment and I get promoted, I answer. Okay, I have $150, who says. And I have 100, Cindy says. And I have 90, that should be enough, I say. Cindy and I hand her our money, hinting to her to purchase the tickets. She slowly gets up, and we watch her walk toward the ticket window. We watch her for 5 minutes talk to the lady at the desk, who gets handed the tickets. With the tickets in her hand she walks toward us. Once she is close enough to us, she hands us each a ticket. The bus leaves in 2 hours, who says. We hurry to gather our stuff and meet the bus in the lower level of the bus station. Good, the bus is still here, I say. Let's get on, who says. We find a nice comfy spot on one of the blue-covered seats and wait for the bus to take us to warmer weather. Virginia is not that far away from New York. It is about a 9-hour drive. That day our feet were standing in Virginia. Once we arrived, we did the same thing as we did when we got to Florida for the first time. Who picks a direction that makes her feel safe. She begins to lead us down some dirt roads, located in the town. The stores were still in walking distance. She leads us into the woods, and beyond some railroad tracks. This looks like a good spot for the night, who said. Okay, you two stay here. I am going to search throughout the night and into the day for some money. I will meet you back here tomorrow night, I say, and begin walking into the busy part of town. I did not want to let Cindy know what I planned on doing, but I knew I had to make this work. If I can come up with $1,000, we can get an apartment. I have to make this work. I don't want to fail. I don't want to have to call home for help. Plus, if Cindy is pregnant, I'm not so sure what her father will do. I quickly find a good location at a store. I planned on asking others for money, telling them my wife is pregnant. We need the money. I stand by the entrance door of the store. A person walks over. Could you spare some change? My wife is pregnant and is about to have a baby, I ask. The person looks the other way and walked into the store. I asked another person and another, I get the same result. At some point while at the store, the manager comes out and had a talk with me. He was extremely mean. I move out to the next spot, a nice 24-hour store. I did the same thing. I stand at the entrance door. Can you spare some change? My wife, she is about to have a baby, I say. You should have thought of that a long time ago, the person says. Late in the night, once the people had stopped visiting the store, I decide to go inside and warm myself. A man was in the store. He was standing next to the coolers. He notices me. As I walk into the store and I pretend to look at the items for sale, I begin to get uncomfortable, so I walk back out. The man in the store noticed. The man by the coolers had noticed I didn't buy anything and was upset. Forcefully he swings open the front entrance door. He turns to me and moves to drive me out of the location by saying, "Next time you come in the store, you ought to buy something." I sort of was intimidated. I took it as if it could be his location, his territory, and he did not want others to take out of it. I left in a hurry, and began to walk through the busy part of town, looking for a sign that says, "Now hiring." I knew asking others for money would have worked, but it was too embarrassing. The people stepped all over my self-esteem. Morning came quickly. Good for me. Now I can ask if a place is hiring. That is, if I get suspicious it is hiring. I walked all day. I find nothing, but periodically if I saw someone who I thought could give some money, who would not damage my esteem, I would ask. Altogether I received $80, but I did not find a job, and I made it nowhere near the 1,000 I expected. I cannot ask people for their money anymore. They take too much out of my self-esteem. I walked back to the place who brought us to the place I told the girls I would meet them at the end of the day. "Brian, you're back," Cindy says. "I've missed you all day." I walk up to her and give her a kiss. I open a grocery bag of food I just had bought with the $80 I had made. "It's still warm, thank you, Brian," Cindy says. That made me feel good. I felt like I did something wonderful, like I took care of my wife, what needed to be taken care of. I did not want to admit it to her. In fact, I just wanted made a good show, and comfort her, so I made it appear as if everything was all right. But I have not really gotten any closer to getting an apartment. "Did you find work?" Cindy asks. "Well, sort of. No, I didn't," I said, once she forced out the situation. "That's okay," Cindy said. "Who and I picked up the paper and it advertised a phone number for a traveling amusement park. We called the number." I was eager to hear what had happened. That could be fun. "What happened?" I asked. "Well, we called the number and asked if we were to work there. Was there a place for us to sleep when we got tired? They said, you each will make $300 a week, plus you three will sleep in a trailer. The trailers are small, but that shouldn't matter, because you will be working most of the time." I said, "How do we join?" The amusement park said, "We will come pick you up in our vehicle. That's if you want the job." "Yes, I want the job," I said. The amusement park gave me the directions to where they will pick us up tomorrow, Cindy explained. "They are going to pick us up tomorrow." "Okay, what time?" I asked. 9 o'clock, Cindy said. "Well, that's great, Cindy, because I did not find much today, just a few people willing to share their money," I admittedly said. Morning came quickly and we rushed to meet our ride. What time were they to be here? I asked to assure myself we did not miss the ride. 9 o'clock, Cindy said. "That is them right there," Cindy says, pointing to the van pulling into the parking lot. "If you want the job, hop on in," the van driver says, as he pulls up. We hurry into the van. He takes us on an hour journey to the show. Once we got there, he showed us the show, and the trailer that we would be sleeping in. He gave us each $300 as a down payment, to assure himself that he had 3 new workers. He quickly explained that I would be working on the rides, putting up and taking down the amusement park rides in between shows. Cindy and Who would each run a game. The games were in small trailers, grabbing customers' attention by enticing them to playing for a prize. That's how the game made money, by luring and tricking people with fancy words and attractions, but little did the customer know, they only had a 30% chance of winning. Most of the money the games made would go to Cindy and Who, because they sort of had to pay rent on the trailer as if they owned the games. The amusement park received 10% of what the two girls made, and that's how the game employees were worked. They were their own boss. If they made money, that was great, and if they didn't, they would still have a job, but no money. The man told us the $300 was ours, to buy whatever we needed for the week. With the $300 he gave each of us, we satisfied our livelihood. We were to start work tomorrow. Early in the morning someone knocks on the wall of our trailer. Time to get up, we got to go to work, the man knocking said. We get up and walk to our stations and begin our first day full of possibilities. My job for that day was cleaning and feeding grease to the machines, as well as making sure everything was safe. Although I did not know much about the job, the amusement park believed fresh eyes inspecting the machines would be able to spot danger better. For the first 2 weeks, we would hope for the best. The job worked us 12 to 20 hours a day, and after a while Cindy and Who got tired. I ignored the strain of working a lot of hours. I loved my job and attempted to find a way to own the entire show. I figured it was as good and at the level of social status my dad was on. Cindy and I could live at a traveling amusement park. As adults, I always wanted one. I told myself, I will buy this show one day. The only way I could at that moment find a way to buy the show was to work for them and slowly save the money, but that will never work, I told myself. I have to find a way for my future family. Cindy got more and more tired as time went on, insisting she was pregnant, and this was not a place to have a baby. I noticed in part she could be speaking truth, but mostly I was having so much fun. All the children, fried foods, games, all day, at the amusement park. In my mind it could not get better. I have a great life, until I hear Cindy disagree. I had to wonder, was she pregnant? What was she trying to say? I wonder if my good time traveling with the amusement park is not the life she wanted. I must talk with her. After I got off work, and Who, Cindy, and I gathered, I guess what Cindy is going through and say, Cindy, I think I can tell this isn't working out for you. Yes, I can too, Who said. I asked, what do you want to do? We have been at this show for several months. I have proved to myself, I can survive, I can work. I plan on buying a show just like this one, but it's not going to mean what it does now. If you're not included, do you want to go home? I am strong enough now. What do you want to do? Brian, I think we should go back to my father. You should have a talk with him. Let him know your dreams, your plans. If you have him, like you have this show, we gain our child. We need that, Cindy says. I have saved all the money I have made while working here, which is $6,000. I'm going to buy a car. Your father will see it and know we mean business. That is so awesome, Brian. I have saved $2,000, Who said. We can drive back home tonight, Cindy, I exclaimed. That day we left our jobs and bought a used car. We used Cindy's address as a cover, just in case we got pulled over by the police. We could simply say we are driving our new car home. We knew we didn't have insurance or even a stable life to be driving. 24 hours later we drop off Who at her house and I take Cindy back to her father. We pull into her yard. I could see Clint standing out front of the garage. He immediately sees Cindy, runs up to the car, and opens the door. He gently grabs Cindy by the arm, pulling her out of the car, and gives her a long, loving hug. Clint never looked at me. It was as if I did not exist. No words of hostility, no violent outbursts. He simply said, "Let us go inside. It is getting late." Clint and I did not say a word for several days. He spent much time with Cindy. On a calm day, I decided to have a talk with Clint. I needed to see what he thought of the past year, what he had thought of us being gone for an entire year. Clint, I say, knocking on the door to his office, how is everything? Did you notice my car? I bought a car. Yes, I see the car. Why did you come back? Clint asks. Cindy wants you in our life, in the life of our child. She keeps saying she is pregnant, but I don't think she is, I answer. She is pregnant. I brought her to the doctor's yesterday. She is due in 5 months, Clint said. I was shocked. I turn and look out of the room that I just came through, and I say, you know, Clint, when I was out there working, making money, I noticed, money was a challenge. Making huge amounts of money is hard. I no longer know how I am going to give Cindy, our child, and myself the life we need, a life without lack. Why don't you go back to pushing the broom at toys? Clint asked. I don't think it's the way. It's not a money-making job. They, at toys, are just doing life, I said. Brian, if you want a good life, a rich life, if you want to serve others as a good worker, you have to liberate your employer. So that, if they fail, they will still have you. If you did, they would say to one another, Brian pushed the broom the whole time, for no reason, we have him, he is a good man. That is how they know they would have you. The school, Old Town School, did that for you. They gave you a passing grade, not out of law, but out of a friendship with intelligence. You expect that? If you truly want to be on a higher level, a more wealthier place in society, you must show yourself available, that you do not seek after fast money, but can endure vanities. That's being better than your employer. That is service. If you can work a job for no reason, you will be noticed, and one day you will become rich, Clint said. Wow, Clint, I think I understand. I will visit toys and perhaps I will have a job tomorrow. Perhaps they still know to trust me, I said and left the room. Once morning came, I immediately drove to toys, and had a talk with the manager, expressing my apologies for leaving abruptly the previous year. She gladly rehired me, mostly for Clint's sake, saying, I understand. A friend of Clint is a friend of mine. I pushed broom for a while, sort of embarrassed about the trip to Florida, but who assured me everything was okay about that trip to Florida while on the bus on the way back to Massachusetts. She advised me to not be too embarrassed or fearful. I began to wonder who explained that trip to Florida to her father. What did happen? I never got around to talking with her about it. I was too busy picking up the pieces to my life. Maybe I should drive to her house after work. I decided to. I drove to her father's mansion after work. I arrive and knock on the door. No one answers. I look through whose bedroom window. I peek in hoping to see who. Instead, to my surprise, I found a note taped on the front of the glass of her bedroom window. I peel it off and open it up, and read it. It said, Brian, call me. It had a phone number and a date written on it. The date was the day we came back to Massachusetts. I brought it back to Clint's, to the apartment above the garage, and dialed the phone number written on the note. Ring, ring, the phone sounded. After I dialed the number, someone picks up. Hello, I hear someone say. Can I speak with who? I asked. This is who. Is this Brian? Who asks. Yes, what happened? Where are you? I ask. My father left the country for a while. He must have thought we have had success. To prove him right, that we had success, I decided to move into the shack I had bought, the one I bought in another country, who explained. That is amazing. How long are you going to be there for? I ask. Until I find success, who answers. We can do this, who. A few years of work and we will have a lot. Wait for me. I'm going to buy an amusement park, and place it right by your house. Who laughs. And Cindy is having a baby. I am going to be a father. I will take the amusement park and my son. and place it right by your shack, which by then will be a house, I say. Okay, Brian, who says while laughing. Our phone call ends, and I begin to hear Cindy walking up the stairs. I'm glad we came back. I'm so happy to spend time with my father, Cindy says. That is great. Hopefully, I will find a future through following his leadership, I said to Cindy as we begin to get comfortable with the idea of living in the apartment, up above the garage, the one Clint let us stay in. I bet if you live up to what he has given you, which is me, the apartment, and the job, you will slowly acquire anything you want, Cindy said. I agreed and stayed quiet, hoping that my son in her stomach was going to be a success, that he will come out a healthy baby. I begin to get a bit worried about the baby and financially supporting it, so I listened to Clint and stayed close by his side for months, hoping that I would find what Clint found in life. I closely watched him in these few months. I examined myself to see if I needed improvements. I splash water on my face and tell myself, I can do this. I say that every morning, proving to myself to gain all that life has to offer. I saved up a few $1,000s. With that few $1,000s, Clint advised me to put that money in the stock market, so I did, for the sake of my child, and for the sake of Cindy. Not much longer, and I rushed into Clint's living room and loudly, full of excitement said, I have $100,000 off of that small investment. I was glad that I listened to him. He advised me to take the money I made in the stock market, and put it into a grow-up plan account for my child. He said, as long as your child has success you will have success, because even if you fail he will be the proof you didn't. If you have two chances with the child, with Alvin, you should put as much money into that account as you can. I did and continued to do my simple job at toys. Clint advised Cindy that she ought to move up above the garage, to lighten the burden of raising a newborn. She did, agreeing with Clint it was a good idea. Through my job, I bought the baby some stuff. Clint also bought stuff for Alvin. Alvin was the name we picked for the newborn, and so we personalized the stuff we bought before he was born. Through your advice, I have done better than if I stayed at the amusement park. I have an apartment, a job, and I have made $100,000 for Alvin. I'm glad I listened to you, and Clint, I say to Cindy. Seventh Grade Streets. Brendon GMC Holden. Chapter 10. Copyright 2020. Brendon Holden. All rights reserved. 10. Old Time Clint. As expected, a baby was soon to be born. At the moment Cindy thought it was going to be born, said, Dad, maybe we should go to the hospital, I think the baby is. Clint carefully placed Cindy into his car saying, Come on Brian, we have to bring Cindy to the hospital, the baby might be due, get in the back of the car, hurry. Clint turns on his blue flashing cop car lights and we begin to race down the highway. I do not know how babies go. I did not know whether to go into the hospital room with Cindy. And what about Clint? Does he stay in the hospital? I could not ask. I had to follow my emotions, and my emotions said, care for the child. I got to welcome my child into the world. We rush into the hospital room. I grab hold of Cindy's hand. She begins breathing heavy. It will be all right, I say. I got to get this thing out of me, she said and started fighting. Clint looks at his daughter to strengthen and comfort her, communicating she can do it, she is his joy. Things moved quickly for her. There was not time to consider if I leave the room. I look over at Clint and I could tell he was not going anywhere. He was too worried. Cindy just sort of started screaming. I stood there begging within myself to feel better. Cindy, feel better. I hated seeing her in the pain she was in. 6 hours later, for the first time, I saw my son. I watch the doctor place Alvin in Cindy's arms. She gives the baby a smile and some kind words. I crouch down and give Cindy a kiss. Happy to see her, happy to see our baby, happy her pain has gone away. I look at Clint, proud to be a man, honored to be strong enough to have given a child, happy to give that child to Cindy, to a healthy woman, who took care of herself and gave birth. Clint gave me a look as if there could not have been a better man for his daughter. He quickly goes to Alvin and looks at the baby. He sure was a happy old man when he looked at the baby. I felt as if he was looking at me, and he approved. I brought a child into the world. It could not get better, but in fear that the moment would end, the moment with Clint, I began to look for a way to escape. I was happy when the doctor advised Clint and I to go home for the night. The next day the doctor allowed Cindy to come home with me. The apartment above the garage was big, 3 bedrooms. We had already established Alvin's bedroom, mostly due to Clint's family. Clint's sister sure loved babies. She gave Alvin a brand new crib, clothes, toys, and a baby monitor. Cindy carried the baby in its car seat up the stairs to the apartment above the garage. She carries him into his bedroom and unbuckles him from the car seat, and carefully places him in his crib. We both pause for a moment. We look at the baby, gently placed in its crib. Cindy and I are still feeling like children but have the confidence that we can grow into the loving parents Alvin deserves. We did good, Cindy, I say. We have more than a job, but a life, a future life, the life we went in search for on the 7th grade streets. Then we did it, Cindy added. Yes, we did, I say. We both in one another's arms walk into the living room. We sit down on the love seat. You know, Cindy, when you said you were pregnant, I had no clue. I cannot believe there is now a baby in the house. When I was young, my mother would get upset. I never knew when, or how, I hurt, or upset her, so I always was careful to listen. Plus I did extra, just in case I did not notice or recognize if I had hurt her. If I would not have done this extra thing, or learned this skill, of doing extra, I would have never noticed that you were saying something, when you said, you were having a baby. I knew I had to care, I just can't find the place to care. It's like I'm blind, I can't see what matters most, but thank goodness I can do extra, I said. That would have been pretty messed up if I forced us to stay working at the amusement park. When you truly were having a baby, your father would have killed me, I said. Cindy said, I'll have to remember that. And as you're doing extra, just remember, extras, like a long time pushing broom. What I am trying to say is, others will do the extra too. Noticing you pushing the broom at toys, someone is bound to find your dreams and help fulfill them. To answer the last statement, I figure nothing is going to shatter your dreams. So if we stayed at the amusement park, I would not have doubted us, but now that you think it was wrong, stay at toys. Someone is bound to notice, Cindy replied. We both fell asleep on the love seat. I do not remember how I made it to the bed that night. I could almost consider that someone else, like the night, used my body in the night, because what happened to the night? How did I find my way to my bed? Someone decided to share that with me while in Virginia. What if my body was being used in the night? Maybe he meant it the right way, maybe not. Sort of like saying, if a tree was to fall in the forest and no one is around, does it still make a sound? What the man said about the night could have been a bad case of not going down the right part of my brain, the part of my brain that could handle it. But the problem is still there, whether the man meant good or bad. I could almost defend Cindy and myself in the morning. The other Brian didn't move in the night, I almost could say, but the idea is not of me, it's a foreign idea. I really got to get rid of it, because there isn't a way to interpret it. Another bad question one could ask themselves is, what if I get food poisoning? I do not care. I do not want that in the sensitive part of the brain, that part of the brain that does grow. Like I'm the dumb one. Did that guy really know what he was saying that day? That guy at the store, the one who said, you ought to buy something when you're in here, while I was in Virginia, asking for money at the gas station. He told me that it is very possible that something uses my body in the night. Of course something does, like rest. It's just the way he said it. That is definitely the last time I look for a free handout at a gas station. To ease my mind, I had to do something fun. I walk into Alvin's room and peek into his crib. "Alvin, what do you want from Daddy?" I say. Alvin does not say anything back. "I know what I can do for you, Alvin. I can build you a treehouse, a nice white treehouse, so that way when you get older, you will have your own." I walk behind Clint's house and into his 20-acre forest. I look at all the trees. I consider what I will build, where I will build it, and how I will supply the material needed to build the treehouse. This is a good spot, I say to myself. Not too far into the forest behind Clint's house was a small grassy clearing. Beyond the clearing stood 4 strong trees. Here I will make Alvin a small treehouse. In this spot he can share his world and make friends with the forest. He can grow up like his mother, having a secret escape. I bought wood, nails, tin, and slowly, I made a small treehouse. Weeks I spent in the forest. Most of my time off from work I spent behind Clint's house, making Alvin's treehouse, health, or rather his backup health/treehouse. I could remember when I was in Georgia, my 6th grade year. It was so wonderful, like a drug. Like who did I seek to move to a new place? I think that what made it so extra special was the expectation of something that possibly, now that I think about it, didn't exist, like a force, causing my childhood innocence to following a drug. I never would have thought that reaching my dream of moving here to Massachusetts, that I would have been scared, cut deep on the inside. I now know what it is like to be less than, to be an outsider. Although I know I stand, after all I gave the town's police leader's daughter a child, like I said I stand, but I must live with the wound. It might look like all is good, but Cindy would take care out of these woods. And now, so do I. Should such a person exist like this? It ought to be play, all day long. But for Alvin, he can stay here, in his tree house. In fact, in his mind he can live my 6th grade year, he can live the 7th grade streets, and never have to bear the pain of lacking Cindy's secret escape, the healing of the wild. I walk up the stairs above Clint's garage. I pick up my son. I put him in my arms. I walk down the hallway. I notice Cindy doing the dishes. "I'm taking Alvin to his secret hideaway," I say, leaving the apartment. I walk him into the forest. "Alvin, what do you think?" I say upon entering the location of the tree house. Cindy must have considered us because she followed close behind. "He loves it, Brian," Cindy says. She walks over to me and kisses me. We both sit down on the dead leaf-covered forest floor. We begin to recall all the moments that we have gained in the forest, whether in the forest streets of the people or the forest streets of the animal kingdom. It held together the pain we had endured in 7th grade. I got the forest, or rather the streets of 7th grade, as who said, it talked and it did. It talked me into a child, I say. "Where is who anyways?" Cindy asked. "I'm not all that sure. The last time I talked with her she moved into that shack she bought," I said, hinting for us to walk back towards the inside, to her house. Along the way I say, I should call her, and let her know that you and I, on the streets of 7th grade, gave birth to a son. In her grandmother's idea of the forest speaking, the forest told me, I must have a home, which produced a son. I know what Cindy meant, extra pushing broom and, a long time, she wants me to do extra nothing around toys. Yet, I can do that, I told myself. What should I do first? I know, I can push the broom at my father's house, I thought, as we walked toward our apartment. I'm going to my father's to call who, so I can do some long-time extras at my father's house, I said to Cindy. As you're doing that, I'm going to learn how to raise a baby, Cindy said while giving me a kiss, wonderfully sending me to my father's house. Knock, knock, I open the door. Dad, are you here? I ask, but hear nothing. I look on the kitchen table and find a note from my mother. Brian, your dad and I went overseas. If you need something, take it. If you want to do something in the house, do it. And please don't burn the house down. Oh, good. I love my parents, I thought as I looked for the broom. Here it is, my dad's favorite red broom. I began to sweep his mansion. I know I needed to call who, but I must do the extras first for Cindy's sake. I spent hours sweeping the floor of my father's mansion. Once done, I pick up his cordless phone and dial the number written on the piece of paper, the piece of paper I pulled off whose window. Her phone begins to ring. Hello, I hear in the other end of the phone. Who, I say. Yup, it's me who answers. This is Brian. How is everything, I ask. Great, but I have nothing to do. I'm not motivated. I want to grow rise, but I have no thrill to be a lot. I think I have too much of myself. Who says? Maybe you should just do, for the very sake of, or at least build that, the motivation, I say. I just began to start fixing an unknown. I'm actually at my father's mansion. I swept his entire mansion. Do back up, just do, you know, and maybe a rice garden will fall out of the sky, I say. We both start laughing. Who says, so, you're just doing, I know what I will do. I will make you rice, a lot of rice, and you will pay me motivation. Well, I'm going to need to finance all that rice. I bet Clint can help. He appears to have a lot of money. I just built my son, Alvin, a treehouse on his 20 acres of land, I say. Who replies, what are you going to do for him? I don't know yet, but working on him is a good idea, because my father doesn't need much else, but my independence. If you make me rise, I could use that as extra. That's if I give it to people for free, and if I give it for free, perhaps if I stumble, they will catch me, I say. Who says, if I am motivated, I will dream big and I invite you to a big world. Good thinking, who? Clint is getting hours of free work and somehow he will find a lot of rise. So will others, and you and I will have made friends with all those people, and so we will invite all of them into your big world, I say. Wonderful, who says. I got to go. I'm going to tell Cindy about the semi-plan. By who? I say while quickly pressing the off button on the phone. Beep. I drove back to Cindy's and my apartment. I pull into the yard, in front of the garage, and park. I begin to walk up the stairs. I find Cindy in Alvin's bedroom. I talked with who? I say. How is she doing? Cindy asked. We made a part of a plan. Do you remember the conversation me and you had about doing extras? I ask. Yes, Cindy says. What if we both did extras? I could still do extra at toys, but we could both do extra for who? She is going to grow rice, a lot of rice. We can give that rice to people for sort of backup, or a social security for ourselves. She needs motivation to dream big. As she dreams big, we can invite others to her big world, I say. How is that going to work? Cindy asks. Just keep her in the back of your mind. If she has need of us one day, we will be there. We need a big world, for us and for Alvin, I say. Cindy asks, so, I'm just to keep who in the back of my mind, sort of like a future family, because she gives us rice to give to others, for sort of a social security for our family. The rice is mostly for her, it's her way of making a way in life, but why should we reject it? There isn't a reason. It most likely is a good idea. We all need one another in life, and who most likely expects it from us. Keep in mind, we are whose motivation. If the forest finds lack, it replaces it, but what if it found more? It most likely would keep the extras, to one day, give to its lack, which means one day our love for who, by making extra, will reach who, and that is what grows the rice, I say. Cindy gives me a warm kiss, as I begin to wonder if she will remain standing. If you start to lack, Cindy, it's okay. I am cool with you as you are now, but I hope you share in mine, or rather whose idea of a big world. What if we one day own a town? I say. Sure, Brian, I share in whose big world, Cindy says. The next morning, I went to toys with the dream in the back of my mind. I knew I had to find Clint and somehow find the lack. All day I wait to find Clint. Finally 3 o'clock came around and my day at toys ends. I walk out. As I walk out I pass by a bench sitting in front of toys. I notice the butts littered the ground. I wonder what Clint would think if he saw all those butts lying on the ground. I consider, now opening up the driver's side door to my car. I jump into my car and begin looking for Clint. I knew he would not be home. He usually would not be at this time. I know where he works. At the police station. I will drive there first. I pull up next to the parked police cars and park. I look around and I do not see Clint. I will just hang out here by my car. It should not matter where I do this extra thing. I stay there until it got dark. I never saw Clint, but I did do extra vanities. I get back into my car, eager to see Alvin and Cindy. I pull into my driveway. I still do not see Clint or his police car. I find my way to my living room couch and I sit down. Cindy notices I am home and comes in to greet me. How was your day? She asks. Well, I went to toys. I did a lot of cleaning and afterwards, I went to look for Clint at the police station, but I didn't find him. I don't know where he is. His cop car isn't in the yard either, I say. Maybe he went out to the bar. He spends moments like that from time to time at the bar, Cindy says. Yeah, maybe, I answer. The next day was similar to the first. I went to toys and then to the police station, but this time I noticed a butt can, with butts littering the ground. I decided to clean up the butts. It bothered me to notice that small thing off, in such a lovely place as the police station. One of the police officers was watching me from his vehicle that day, as I cleaned up the ashtray. That man at some point got to talking to Clint, he said. A young man came here and started cleaning up the ashtray. Clint says, who would do that? It looked like the young fellow that Cindy has been dating, the police officer answered. That don't sound like Brian. He works at toys. He would not spend his extra time here, cleaning up litter on the ground, Clint responded. I went there, at the police station for a few weeks, doing extras, and that police officer who had talked with Clint the first time noticed me again, cleaning up and asked me for my name. Brian, I said. Aren't you dating Cindy, Clint's daughter? The police officer asks. Yes, I have been for a while, I say. Oh yeah, I'll have to tell that to Clint. You like to hang around the police station, the policeman said. I drive home that night thinking perhaps he would be upset by me hanging around at the police station, thinking I might be abusing his friendship by doing whatever I want, but to my surprise that night when I got home, Clint met me in the yard and said, Brian, Jim at the police station said you've been cleaning up. I'm usually down there, although I park up the street I am usually in the building. If you like it at the station, do not hide in the parking lot, come on in the station, then I can introduce you to some of the guys, Clint says. I nodded my head to express I understood. Now happy that Clint approved of my doings, I walk up the stairs to my apartment. The next morning, I did the same thing I have been doing, working at toys, and spending my evenings at the police station, but this day I walk in, and Clint greets me and sort of shows me off. Brian, I'm glad you came in. Everyone, this is Brian, my daughter Cindy's soon-to-be husband. All the police officers warmly greeted me. Clint sort of gave them the notion to let me roam in the public parts of the station, just so I could make family out of the community. There was not another reality I came to conclude after spending time on the 7th grade streets. Seventh grade streets. Brendon GMC Holden. Chapter 11. Copyright 2020. Brendon Holden. All rights reserved. 11. Work. Months went by and things stayed the same. I begin my days at toys, and my evenings at the police station. So far, I have made nothing in money at the police station, but I knew that if I slipped or something bad was to happen, I was protected by the entire police force, and so was my son. I never knew when those bad or surprising moments would happen. For example, Cindy saying, "I'm pregnant." I did not even hear what she was saying, but I did know that I did something out of love, and that love in me told me to keep the love alive, but I didn't think our love needed to be kept alive, that Cindy possibly needed to be kept alive, that she needed it. This is too important, I tell myself. I ought to do some other stuff. I wonder if I bought some sort of uniform with my own money to wear at the police station. If I did, then the other guys there would be able to use me for something more their style. I did. At first no one seemed to notice, but after a while some of the townspeople started thinking I was one of the policemen. Through simply putting myself in the situation, the townspeople made it easier on the other police officers to make me one of them. "Brian, clean up the storage shed. Brian, file these papers. Brian, can you sanitize the holding cell?" That is what the other policemen began to ask. I did a particularly good job when asked, not necessarily for them but for my future, as well as who and my dream of a big, big world. When my child turned 2 years old, the cops at the station, after 2 years of free work, decided along with Clint to give me a free 6-month training course to qualify me to receive pay for what I was doing. I was a bit nervous, but at this point I had to do the training course. I told myself it was only 6 months, but my nervousness would not go away. I failed the course 3 months in. I did not show up at the police station for a few days afterwards. I hid. I knew I could pass that course, but why am I not? What was I doing? And what did I do? I failed. I started out working on extras. I began to put the two ideas together. It suddenly hit. I failed their will for me, so that I could continue doing my free work. If they pay for my extra work, paying for free work would most likely cancel out my work. But I cannot just do my will. It could make me look bad. I must do Clint's will as well, so maybe I should pay for the course. Will Clint go for that? I think he will. I know how I can pass this course. I can continue doing my thing, free work, and fit in with Clint's wishes by paying for the training course. I walk into Clint's house hoping he was there. I say out loud, "Clint, are you here?" "Yeah, I'm in the kitchen," Clint answers. "Clint, I think I know why I failed the training course. I truly desired to pass. I think I figured out a way to make your idea and mine work together for me to pass this course. I will pay you for the failed course, plus I will pay for a brand new course. That should make both of us flow as one. Please let me pay," I insist. "How much does that cost?" "Brian, I will pay for it. I'm not worried about the money," Clint says. "No," I answer. "I have to do what I was doing, and that was working for free. That is the only way to pass, by me holding myself accountable to what I began, and that was working for free, for my will, my purpose. I have to pay for it, Clint," I said. "Okay, the course is about $300. The both of them together make $600, Clint said. With 6 months I got the certificate. I passed. I just kept telling myself I was needed, not Clint, not the police force. If I needed to protect my stuff now, I was. Once I had the certificate, Clint's boss hired me part-time, paying me $300 a week. I was still working at Toys, bringing in about $1,500 a month. Clint insisted I didn't pay rent on the apartment above the garage, so I had a lot of extra money, which periodically I would spend on Cindy and Alvin. After months of work, I had thousands of dollars. I have not been sure on what to spend it on, but I knew my favorite job/pastime so far, and that was the job at the amusement park. I began to consider if that is my future, maybe I should buy some of their rides. If I collect enough of them, they could financially support part of my life. Cindy, I say after spending time at the police station, I really love that job at the amusement park. What will you think if I begin to buy rides, trailers, and games? I could buy them and leave them where they are. I could charge the show to rent them or use them. I also could buy some and bring them here. That's if Clint don't mind. We could buy broken ones and fix them, sort of like we did when furnishing the apartment, get a lot for a little. Within 10 or 20 years, we could sort of house there, and work there. Most likely it would just be for the summer though, because Alvin might need to school. We could homeschool him, if we got really structured in what we are doing. Most likely we would just do the summer, so that I could still play my part at the police station. What do you think, Cindy? Amusement park living, traveling from state to state, making money, making children happy. I say. Oh, wow, Brian, I sure love that idea. I wish we could leave right now. I want to do something food, like apples, candy apples, apple crunch. I could sell it out of a traveling trailer, Cindy said excited. So, Cindy and I had a plan. We were in part going to have a traveling show. She decided to do a lot of investigating. She said she would be better at it. It was rather like her plan in the beginning. She advised for me to just continue going to work, and if she found a ride or game trailer she would show it to me and then I could decide if I wanted to buy it. Months went by and nothing, but toward the end of the year she found a kid boat ride for $600. It needed some work. I looked at the article advertising it. It was a small machine that took 6 to 8-year-olds in a circle, all the while the boat would be going round. I had waited long enough when I first mentioned it. I was ready to jump into it. I will buy it, Cindy, not because it will make money, but because I want it for fun. I will have fun putting that machine in working and operating condition. A few weeks later, Cindy pointing out another machine for sale. This one dwelled in the south, a couple states down. I decided traveling to that state would be worth it. It was a machine that goes round. Barrels go round. It was clean and shiny. It advertised as used a few times. It was basically brand new. It cost about $1,000. I must have it. The ride was small, so I could tow it with my car. I drove to Virginia. I found the address and purchased the barrel ride. I quickly brought it home. I had to set it up. I must see how well it worked. I put it in the back of Clint's garage, and began to pull out some of the parts of the barrel ride. The exact name of the ride is River Barrel Run. It had a purple and orange striped top curtain to hide its interior, giant brown barrels, a motor and a lot of fence. I set it all up and plugged it into a socket in the garage, turned it on, and lights began to flash, and then I see the barrels go round. That works as well as a brand new machine, I say to Cindy, who was there helping me set up the ride. As months went by we found and bought a few more rides, plus a couple of game trailers. We began to buy so much, Clint noticed and decided to talk to us about it. He had been ignoring it, waiting to see what would come out of it. Brian, I've noticed you have bought more than a few amusement rides. There is a 10-acre chunk of land not too far from here. It only costs about $9,000. If you cannot afford it, I can loan the money to you. You should get that piece of land to put your machines on, Clint says, as we sit at the kitchen table. Cindy, what do you think of that? I asked. You should get it. If in the future we need the land to build a house, we can. It's a good investment, Cindy said. Is that the land by the old red barn? I ask. Clint answers, yes, that's the one. I will drive over there tomorrow, and I will give it a look, I said. The next day I drive over there and began walking around the property. I noticed the old red barn. I decided to walk up to it. Once I walked up to the old red barn, I noticed an older man sitting on the inside of the open barn. I see that land is for sale, I say to the man in the barn. Yeah, sure is, the man says. I want to buy it, I say. Give me $10,000 and all 10 acres is yours, the man says. Will you take a check? I ask. Yut, the man says. I walk over to my car and open the glove box and grabbed one of my checkbooks and wrote the man a check for $10,000. The deed is in the house, I'll go get it and sign it over to ya, the man says. Well, that was simple, I tell myself. I cannot wait to tell Cindy. Within 5 minutes the older fellow walks over to me with the deed to the land in his hand. Here you go, just the land. Permits are required for anything else, for example, a house, the man says. You would need a permit to build a house. Okay, I said and walked over to the 10-acre lot I just bought and began to consider where I will put each ride. In the midst of daydreaming, I pulled together my mind and knew I wanted to wait for Cindy to dream. We should think about this together. I opened the driver's side door to my car and got on the inside and drove home. Cindy, I say as I open the door to our apartment. Yes, she says from our bedroom. I pull the property deed to the land I just bought and hand it to her. I bought the land, I said. Great, Brian, that is really going to help out our future. We can slowly build a house there, like a winter house, so that when we're not traveling on the show, cause of colder weather, we can come home. She was so happy, I could see the sparkle in her eyes when she mentioned a house, as if she had been planning on one since a young age. Dad, Brian bought the land, Cindy says as she approaches her father. I say, I will slowly bring one ride and then another until all my rides, trailers, and food stands are on my property. Asterisk. One summer when Alvin turned 17, I was about to leave work, when I hear the manager say, from his office, Brian, can you come here? I have to talk with you. I turn around from walking out the front door and approach his office. I reach the door and go inside. Coffee aroma blasts me in the face as I enter his office. Brian, I hate to do this to you, but we're going to have to let you go. We did not make enough money this year to support some of the staff here. Do not take it personal, you are not the only one. 2 other guys had to be let go of too. He pulls out an envelope from the inside of his desk and says, this is the remaining money Toys owes you, your last check. I grab the envelope and say, well, you know where I live, that's if you need anything. It's been a great time working here, thank you. I begin to walk out the door to go to my car. I waited until I got home to put it within my mind that I no longer had a job. Cindy, Toys no longer needs me, I say sadly. You mean you're not working there anymore, Cindy says. Right, they did not make enough money to employ me, but Toys said to not take it personal. 2 other guys are no longer working there either, I answer. I waited a few days before I considered my next move. I did not want to bring it up before Clint cause I did not want to say or do the wrong thing all because I was in a panic. The day I decided to bring it up to Clint, I first brought up my worry before Cindy. After explaining my worry she said, I told my dad you were without a job. He told me he talked to a couple of guys at the station and they could use you full-time, like, a full-time job. So, your father knows, and he plans on giving me a full-time job, I asked to double sure myself. Yes, you can go talk to him right now if you would like, she answers. I jump off the couch and walk down the stairs of our apartment above the garage and walk into Clint's house. Clint, I say upon entering his house. I search for him. I find him in the basement. Cindy just mentioned that you have another job for me. Sure do, Brian, that's why I'm in the basement, to see if I could find my old uniform. Ah, here it is, Clint says pulling out a tightly compressed, clear bag. He unzips the bag and pulls out a blue uniform. Try this on and see if it fits, Clint says. I bring it upstairs to a private room and change into it. It fits wonderfully, exactly my size. I walk back down the stairs and say, it fits great, but I can't take your uniform for free, let me pay for it. If I pay for it, Maybe I will feel more in control while I am wearing it. Clint says, I really don't want to, I wanted it to be a gift, but if that's what you need, I can do it, but you got to promise me, if I need to receive retirement you will not be the one giving it, Clint humbly says. I totally get that. I promise that I will not retire you, or will I walk over your gift, I say. Brian, be at the station tomorrow morning, don't be late, we have to go over a few things with the sheriff, and again, don't be late, Clint says, fearing for me. Okay, I answered. I went back to tell Cindy and show off my given uniform. Cindy, I say upon entering our apartment, Clint gave me one of his old uniforms, or rather should I say, I bought it. He told me to be at the station in the morning and to not be late, it's very important. You get up early, right? I say, I don't want to miss this, I have to be there early in the morning, will you be the lookout for me, please? I ask. Sure, Brian, that's if you can sleep at all, you sure look excited, Cindy says. Cindy was right, I didn't sleep at all that night, I eagerly waited for 5 o'clock to come, so I could kiss Cindy goodbye and get in my car and drive to the police station. Finally, morning came, I kiss Cindy and get into my car, I arrive and walk in and begin to look for Clint. Brian, over here, I hear Clint say. I walk into the room he was located in, he begins to question me in regards to the future as well as some of the things we will be going over with the sheriff. Brian, if we got you into some training, more professional training, would you be willing to do that? Clint asks. Yes, I say, and we begin to go into the office of the sheriff. The first question the sheriff asked is, if we gave you a gun, are you okay with that, and if we needed you to, do you think you could use it? Yes, I reply. The sheriff, pleased to hear my answer, looks at me and says, if you are going to work for us, you might, from time to time, work 24 to 36 hours, are you okay with that? I was not all that sure about the last question, but it is possible that I could put all those extra hours into my extras, or possibly even to motivate who. To answer the best way, the only way, was to say, yes, I can do that. Good, Brian, the sheriff says, and goes to a locker in his office and pulls out some police gear, a gun, badge, club, and a walkie. These are yours, try not to use them until you are finished with your training, the sheriff says. Okay, I say, and begin putting on the gear in front of the two men. I did not do much that day, mostly talked with the policeman. One officer I particularly spent a lot of time with, went by the name, Officer Foodie. He drove me around the town and trained me to see the bigger picture, to see not necessarily law, but a place in society. His exact words were, if you have a gun, most likely that's the reason for a good community, that is, what makes a good cop, not your speed, not how well you do and not how much you want to do it, just the gun. Makes sense, I replied. My first day on the job gave me things I could proudly show off in front of Cindy. I got to show Cindy some professional gear. I walk up the stairs to our apartment and say, Cindy, check this out, I got a gun and a badge. So, you are now officially a police officer? She asks. Yes, I say, and walk over to Alvin. How are you today, little buddy? I say to my 9-year-old son. He looks at me and says, Dad, you are in front of the TV. Oh, I say, and move out of the way. Are you going to grow up and be like me, a police officer? I ask him, full of pride. Does that mean I get a gun? Alvin asks. I knew the only answer to that question, after listening to Officer Foodie all day, was to say, yup, it does, Alvin. That's what makes a cop, a good cop. Seventh grade streets. Chapter 12. Copyright 2020. Brendon Holden. All rights reserved. 12. 7th grade streets. M. Why boy, my son, just turned 12, he starts the 7th grade in a month, in the fall year. For years I have been working as a police officer, being highly esteemed by the community. Rarely do I have time to reflect to the year I began 7th grade, to the year I met Cindy. I thought about skipping Alvin's 7th grade year at Old Town School and bringing him south to start up our amusement park show together. I've been gathering pieces and parts for over 6 years. I have enough to create a miniature show in the parking lots of malls, plazas, etc. A show I am calling Alvin's Amusement Park, but I will not start up the show this year, because Cindy wants him to start the 7th grade the right way, the way she wanted to, when she was in 7th grade, before she left. She mentioned that she will spend days at Old Town School for Alvin's sake, to double sure he is not being oppressed by the system, that he gets the full education he deserves. I could not disagree. I knew what it meant to watch life fall apart in the 7th grade. That is good, Cindy. If you spend time at the school, that is, like extra, like as Clint said to me, if you have Alvin, you have 2 chances. If we fail Cindy, Alvin will be there as the proof that we did not. We do not have to consider if we were to fail. We have 2 chances. I agree with my father, when he said, that's what money is for, security. Alvin is sort of like money. We put a lot of work into him, and now that he is 12, we should double our efforts and put as much time into him as possible, I say to Cindy. I can do that, Brian, Cindy says. Well though, you're a cop, so if you go to the school and have a talk with them, and tell them I want to spend all day at the school as a volunteer, maybe they will be more willing to let me spend time there, and ignore all the school's regulations, Cindy added. We should go together, I say. I used to do that volunteer thing with Clint at the police station. I'm sure they won't mind. We will tell them that you would like to hang out, in your liberty, as a tutor or perhaps just to organize books. That is a great idea, Brian, Cindy says. I drove Cindy to the school, to Old Town School, before Alvin was to start his 7th grade year. I took my police car that was recently given to me, by the police station, the police car I earned, because the station loves me. I needed to take it to show off what I have earned from patiently serving the community. I earned that much of the respect of the community. We walked through the double doors, of a school, that I had a really hard time going to, a school that had seemed to leave unbearable scars. Many times did Cindy and I walk through these double doors when we were young. We walk to the principal's office, we sit down at his desk. I start the conversation. Cindy would like to spend the school days here, sort of like a mentor. She could place herself in the library and organize, or possibly do other jobs, the other teachers can't do, because they are too busy, or they just plainly need the help. What I would like to do, Cindy says to the principal, is, make sure my son Alvin has a wonderful 7th grade year, here, at Old Town School, that he is free from harm, and learning and passing the 7th grade. I want to be here to guide him to success. With your permission I can help my son pass the 7th grade, and sort of give him the 7th grade year, that I never had. The principal answered, that is fine with me. We would introduce you to the other staff as a tutor. The students will know you as a librarian. Okay, Cindy and I agreed. While Cindy happily spent her days at Old Town School, I spent my days at the police station. Most days there was not all that much of a job for me, just presenting the authority of myself to the town. As the man who trained me to be a police officer said, if they see you with a gun, most likely that's the reason for their obedience. Weeks went by and the past memories of my 7th grade year flooded my mind. I could remember the winter, who, Cindy, and I watched my dad's animation together, as well as when Cindy, and I, got lost on the snow machine trails. Maybe it has something to do with Alvin being in 7th grade. Maybe it has something to do with Cindy hanging out at the school, trying to fulfill her 7th grade year through our son, the 7th grade year the school found no reason to be, and created a deep wound, and caused Cindy to act with every ounce of love in her being. I thought about these precious moments right up to the winter, before I decided to call Who, to see how she was making out in that distant country. Did she ever get a bigger house, and where is all that rice? Ring, ring, whose phone rang? Hello, who says? Who, it's Brian, I'm calling to see how you're doing, and to ask, how far have you made it in growing rice, I ask. Good, Brian, I now have a lot of rice, and a bigger house. When can you come and visit? Hopefully, you will come here before the end of the spring, you and Cindy. I want us to catch up on things, as well as I want you to look into a vacation home, on my property. I think that would be of interest to you. Can you be here by the end of spring, Who asks? To make her happy, and to keep the bond between us strong, I quickly say, yes, I can, or rather we can. I have to ask Cindy, and most likely she will say yes, plus I will bring Alvin. From the time Who and I had that conversation, I waited anxiously for the beginning of summer. As summer approached, I had a lot going on, work at the police station, Cindy at school, and Alvin attempting to relive mine and Cindy's 7th grade dream, plus Sunny Day Festival is in the spring. I wanted to set up part of Alvin's amusement park, at Sunny Day Festival. On top of it all, I wanted to visit Who, but I have not even attempted to include traveling to Who's country in my schedule. As a matter of fact, I have not asked Cindy. I do not know exactly how I was going to ask Cindy. She has never been in a distant country, and from what she says about it, it does not sound like she would want to go. As spring approached, I knew I needed to at least ask Cindy about visiting Who, because I must beforehand buy the tickets. Cindy, who invited us to visit the country she lives in, she wants to show us, and possibly if we wanted, to buy a vacation home there. I say, after Sunny Day Festival, do you want to fly to the place Who dwells, to her house, I ask. Do you want Alvin with us, Cindy asks. Yes, I answer. I am fine with that, she answers. Great. By the way, how is Alvin doing in school, I ask. All passing grades. He possesses the school. He definitely doesn't fear, because I am here, which is not just good for him, but for the other students as well. So much so, just today the school board offered me a salary, to sort of appear to be a teacher, Cindy says. Wow, that's great, Cindy. What are we going to do with the money, I ask. I want a house on that property, the property next to my dad's house, the one you bought by the old red barn, and now just thinking about it, if Who does have something to offer when we visit her, now, we will have the money, Cindy said. I'm glad you said that, I reply. Asterisk. Day of Sunny Day Festival, I hurry to bring a few select rides. I bring them to Sunny Day Festival. I make sure Alvin is with me the whole time. One day, my hope is, he will manage, own, and operate Alvin shows. Alvin, do you see that big green button? I say, looking at the rides that were set up at Sunny Day Festival. Once the other children get on the rides, just press the big green button, and the ride will begin to spin, I say to Alvin. Okay, Dad, Alvin says. I will be here the whole time, so if you need me when you press it, just ask, but it should be pretty simple. The whole boat ride is automatic. Just press the button and everything is done for you, including stopping the motion of the ride, I say. Okay, Dad, Alvin says. I look at Cindy to my right, and say, it sure feels good to be out here. This is what I wanted 13 years ago. This was one of my fantasies in living, a child's playground, a playground I own. Now we have our own child, one that can, without failing, help fulfill that fantasy. Not only will this amusement park support him while growing up, but it is a fun thing. He will be the best thing that comes into town. Alvin's shows. Cindy, smiles and asks, "Are you going to try to do more of these shows this summer? You have talked about it, like setting up in some of the other towns, plazas, and malls." "It's a great idea, but I don't have the assurance I need to confidently fulfill that," I answer. Cindy without hesitation says, "I know what we can do. Let's take Alvin to the spot who took us, the spot where the forest spoke to us." "Great idea," I say. "Alvin, come with me and your mom for a moment." We slowly walk down the bank leading to the river, the one Cindy and I walked down in 7th grade, the one with the small stream at the bottom. The wind made a soft-sounding whistle as it flowed through the forest. "What is your first thought, Brian?" Cindy asks. "Extras," I answer. "Alvin, sweetie, what is your first thought?" Cindy asks. "I'm hungry. I want some ketchup on French fries. Dad, you said you were going to buy me some," Alvin answers. I knew what the forest had said. Alvin likes fun, tasty, and good things, and I need to do extras. I began to think, what if I do not attempt to make money off the show? What if I paid for the entire show to be set up and operated without the hope of making money? If others were to buy tickets, the money made could go straight to Alvin, as motivation to build more of himself, as well as for Alvin's shows. I just had the best idea, I say to Cindy. Of course Alvin and I are going to do shows this year, as extras, for Alvin, to do as you're doing in school. This would allow him to find liberation in the workplace. I know what you're saying, Brian, and the money I make through Old Town School will help, as well as owning our own home, rather than to pay rent every month. We can take that money and use it for Alvin's shows, Cindy says. Excitedly, I walk back up to the festival, to Alvin's shows. I look at the sign saying Alvin's shows as I approach the rides. I knew one half of my own was complete. Surprisingly, at Sunny Day Festival others notice, and schedule Alvin and I in different towns, malls, plazas, etc. If they asked, and they did, I had the answer. I can afford to set up Alvin shows. But before we could move into summer, we had to visit Who, and that was to happen in a week. I was eager to go, not only to see my loved friend for years now, but to make physical contact with the dream we share. Before I could consider in depth leaving the country, suddenly we were on a huge airplane heading towards a small, poor country. Who really loved this country? I could not blame her. It was truly the streets of 7th grade. Hoping we boarded the right plane, and that Who was at the airport, I worried most of the journey, until I saw Who's face. The plane is approaching the airport. We're about to land. Everyone please remain cautious, we hear in broken English over the intercom/announcement speakers. I sort of shut my eyes, as the plane begins to land. "Are you okay, Daddy?" Alvin asks. "Yes, I am fine. I can't wait to introduce you to Who. You're going to love her. Perhaps we will come stay here from time to time," I say, covering up my anxieties, reminding myself to stay calm, appear like everything is okay on the plane. There could be many more plane trips like this. The plane skips off the ground as it touched the pavement, slows down, and pulls into the boarding part of the small airport. We grab the small amount of items we had with us and walk off the plane. We begin to look for Who knew this place well. She had been watching Flight 1067 for a while and knew exactly where it would land. As we walk into the lobby, we see Who. A purple headband crowned her head, green highlights in her hair radiated a fresh look. I see her and run up to her. "Who, it sure is good to see you," I say, wrapping my arms around her body. "This is Alvin," I say loudly and proudly, putting my hand upon Alvin's shoulder. "Hi, Alvin," Who says. "You're a handsome young man. You look just like your father, especially when he was your age, and in the 7th grade." Memories flooded Who's mind, memories when Cindy and I spent time with her. As she remembered us, she became relaxed and felt as if she was young again. We rush back to her house. 2 days we are going to be here. Who had every moment planned. As we pull into her house, Still being built, she says. If you have been creating motivation, it has worked. I have plenty of rice that I want to ship to your country, so that you can use it, perhaps even for your child's growth. This is my home, who says. It's still being built, because I mostly buy land, who explains. I look at a huge building. I could tell it was being worked on, but it was much bigger than I thought. There must have been 30 to 40 new rooms added to it. On the topic of land, Brian, who says, I have over 1,000 acres of land now, but I have not many people, so I want to invite you to build here. When you're here on vacation, you can stay at my house until you build a vacation home or homes. If you buy land, I will give you a good price, because you motivate me. If you take the rice and make more money, you should spend some here. You could make a town or village, for you and your children. Plus, I am having a child. I am pregnant and giving birth to my first child in a few months. Say yes, Brian. Yes to building here, who says, we could build something so wonderful. How much rice did you grow? Cindy asks. I am sending to you, overseas, a big boatload, who says. Cindy looks at Brian and says, fried rice and rice cakes at Alvin shows could be a big money maker, if not green money, then social money. Who walks around huge spaces of empty land, explaining to us, where we can build, how much she hopes we build, and her entire plan. Cindy and I shared every dream she had. We were dreaming alongside of her. Before I left, I gave her my plan, a small town, fit for 1,000 people, working and motivating whose people, which she planned on many. Once we got home, we quickly scrambled to put the other half together. Cindy took part of the money she began making at Old Town School and gave some to who to develop the town we discussed. The other part she used to pay on a loan she got from the bank to build a $300,000 home on the land I bought, the land next to the big red barn. Who sent a lot of rice, enough rice that it kept Alvin shows up and operating for years. Although we did not make money, Alvin did. He made a social existence. Years went by and we patiently built. The more money we made, the more we could invest. A lot of our money went to establish the town in whose land. I figured once the town was livable we could rent buildings and employ people, and this would bring in more money. Once Alvin was old enough, about 25 years old, he learned great ways to bringing in money at Alvin's shows. It supplied all that he needed, plus savings. He eventually moved out of our house. The year it was all paid for, he didn't need it. At 25, he had 50 people working for him, making a yearly salary of $80,000. Soon he would buy his own house. Alvin had many children, and we allowed them to live in whose city/village, that is if they wanted to. Cindy over time gave birth to more children. They as well could move into the village. Asterisk. One day, without considering that I made it, that I had success, I invited my father over to the house Cindy built. I haven't really seen or talked to him in years, just a quick hi there, or a small gathering there. But this time it would be different. This time I was 100% on the level of existence as my father. I invited him to a Christmas gathering, and of course he showed up. As we sit by the fireplace, I say, Dad, do you remember that animation, the one you did of the man that was driven from town to town? Yes, I remember, my dad answers. He was driven from town to town looking for his own. Yours was picked, because it was reality. People like reality better. Well, I loved my risk-taking journey from 7th grade to now, and can understand why one would want to watch such, because it is worth it, because I felt it. Like the man in your animation, ever since I got hurt in 7th grade, I roamed to find the level of authority you have in life. I wanted something similar to yours. Well, I have found it. I have finally found my own. I ought to write a book, and name it, 7th Grade Streets. The end.